Hi, Zizaran here with another video, and this is going to be a slightly more complicated one. This is two Patho buildings in one video. This is Summon Raging Spirits and Animate Weapon. And that is because Animate Weapon is a little bit rough to League start with. So this is basically a 2-in-1 guide, and both are doable like standalone. But I would not recommend League starting Animate Weapon, and that is because we want two very specific uniques, United in Dream and the Covenant. They're very, very big for the build. So generally, I don't recommend League starters that really want unique. For Summon Raging Spirits, this is something I've played a lot. People know it as bees. And yeah, we will be leveling with exploding them. So very, very fun playstyle. You can see me playing it on the background. Incredibly fun, especially if you have the bee MTX instead of skulls. They're now bees. It doesn't get better than that. You light them on fire and they will explode and kill themselves on the target. Now, in the endgame version of this, minion instability, which is what makes them explode on death, has started falling off a bit, and Tavakai got nerfed. So we are actually on the endgame version of the Summon Raging Spirits going to be attacking. And it looks pretty solid. We should have around 4 million DPS with everything attacking in a pretty endgame scenario. Now, this build is a great bosser, and especially on the Animate Weapon portion, you should just run up to a boss, convocate, and it will melt. We will have so much damage, and this is a build I really want to do this league because I almost did it last league, but I was playing solo self-found and I couldn't get everything I needed. Now I'm playing trade league and that should not be a problem anymore. And first, let's talk a little bit about the leveling process. SRS is such a dream for leveling. You're just running and right-clicking. You're basically dropping a little bee here and there. I'm gonna call them bees instead of skulls because the MTX is amazing. But you're just running around and dropping a bee. And early on, we have Infernal Legion. So everything around the bee will be burning, and it is so great. And this is a build that really benefits from leveling up. So if you are struggling a little bit on damage, holding control down when you're entering the instance and redoing a zone a couple of times will give you so much XP just from your gem leveling up. So that's a really, really great like bonus that we get instead of attack skills, which need better gear to improve their damage. It's also very, very easy to get even more damage by getting +1 level of fire spell skills early on your wand. So you can get 2 of those, and if you for some reason get a +2 duration tabula, your damage is literally insane. Another thing that's great is that there are now bone wands like early. They have 2 new wand types early, similar to Convoking Wand, and bone spirit shields now have minion mods on them. There is also +gem level on a minion helmet, which is global now. We don't know how early that will be yet, but maybe that's something you can get as early as like 30 to 50. Something worth mentioning is that early on, you can rush minion instability, and that would be a large amount of damage on, you know, Merveil and bosses early. However, we're not 100% sure where that falls off now, but, you know, it's not as strong as before. You can keep it until you feel that the explosions, and they're pretty visible. You see like the chunks. And once you feel that they are no longer like the main period, which we're guessing is going to be like between 50 and 65, you'll be switching over and you can see our endgame setup is more attack focused. It's all about your Summon Raging Spirits actually attacking. Unleash is huge for Summon Raging Spirits. And then you have minion damage, LA damage with attacks, fire pen, and melee splash. 4 bosses, and they're both red gems. 4 bosses, you will swap out melee splash with multi-strike. For map bosses, this shouldn't be an issue, but if you're doing things like, you know, Cyrus or, you know, Guardians, anything like that, then you want to use multi-strike instead. So, you can see that we have skill sets here with what you're using for leveling. And this PoB will only have the Summon Raging Spirits part. We have a separate PoB for all the Animate Weapon stuff, because you are ideally swapping over once you have United in Dream and the Covenant. You don't really want to swap earlier. You can swap without the Covenant and it should still be enough, but the Covenant is also insane and shouldn't be too hard to get, hopefully. In items, you can see everything is like super basic. It's just life and resist. Minion speed is really, really nice, and we do have earlier levels of Convoking Wands now. So the fossil combo to hit +2 easy on this is Corroded, Jagged, Metallic, and Shuddering. That will make it, I think it's like 1 in 8 or 1 in 10 to hit +2. It's incredibly common compared to how rare it would be to get this naturally. Darkness Enthroned is really good, and parts of minion builds are getting buffed a little bit this league because Ghastly Eyes which were already incredibly strong before, are getting buffed even more, and this will be incredibly important for Animate Weapon. So really, really good. And we are a Necromancer, so you can see our Ascendancies here. We have Mindless Aggression, Bone Barrier, Mistress of Sacrifice, and Commander of Darkness. And especially with Commander of Darkness, this is super easy to resist cap, and you don't have many uniques. Obviously, they changed Unnatural Strength. It is no longer +2 gem levels. And this build is incredibly tanky. You can get max block, and if you can roll one, you can get a life on block shield, making it very, very tanky. And now let's take a look on the Animate Weapon portion. So the important thing here is to have a United Dream. You don't want to switch before that. That is because we don't have great sources of minion poison, and this also grants you level 25 Envy. And we can put Generosity in that weapon, and that will make the Envy level 25 even stronger. So you can see this is a little bit less leveling focused. This is basically early maps, endgame, and then a super tanky version with Zabaqua. So a little bit more of an advanced build. So Animate Weapon, you're basically summoning weapons off the ground, and we are going to be using Bladefall. And Bladefall, you can summon glass shards off the ground. So that means that you can actually do bosses on this build. And we are going to have an insane amount of damage. Very, very strong build. And Ghastly Jewels getting buffed is huge for this build. We are only using triple stat ones here, but you could get like 4 stat damage jewels, which will skyrocket your damage. The rest of the gear isn't too complicated, and the Covenant is really nice as well. Level 29 added chaos. However, it will also cost life and mana, but we are using EB, so it shouldn't be a huge issue. Now, as you can see, this is a really, really strong build. Once you get this up and running, you are rocking 7 million DPS with just the gear you see here. But wait, there's more. This is our clearing setup using Melee Splash. So if you take off Melee Splash, and let's say that you have a white socket, so you can switch to minion damage, that puts you up to nearly 10 million DPS. And if you don't have a white socket, you can still use Melee Physical. It puts us up to nearly 9 million DPS. So it is a little bit clunky and weird to play, but it is incredibly strong, really, really fun. They last so long that it is a great experience. One downside to the build is that because we are using United Dream, you have no thing auto-casting Bone Offering. Like on Summon Rating Spirits, you can do a trigger one, which will auto-cast your Bone Offering. Or Flesh Offering if you're on softcore and you don't care about living. For this version, you will need to self-cast Bone Offering, or you can make the focus, like cast spells when focused on your helmet. And we have so much duration on the build that it will last permanently while you're focusing. If you're struggling with using Withering Step for the Wither charges are huge for your damage. So for your single target, you could replace minion speed with Withering Touch, or your minion damage for Withering Touch. But Wither stacks are very, very big for your damage. So for the defenses of this build, you're using Determination, Defiance Banner, and Tempest Shield. That also makes you shock immune. You take less likely to get crit, and you get a large amount of armor. And so very, very tanky from that. On top of that, we are max block. And ideally, you want to get a recover life when you block shield. This is huge and will make you feel incredibly tanky. So you don't have grace, but we do have max block. Very, very tanky build. And you can also have bone armor on your mouse button 1. That will make it just auto cast whenever. Pantheon on this build is the Brine King for face immunity, and then we're going to do Rallycash for less damage taken from bleeds while moving, so that's pretty strong. The Bandit is going to be skill points, so make sure you kill them all. Now let's do the frequently asked questions to make sure we've covered everything in the build. Can the build have mana issues? So we are going to do Eldritch Battery. That'll solve all the mana issues, and until then, you can use a mana flask. So for financial hurdles for this build, we don't fully know. United in Dream is not a common unique. It will become common into the middle of the league. However, early on, if there is a lot of people playing Animate Weapon, which it very well might be this league, it could end up being anywhere between 100 and 400 Chaos, or maybe even a few Divines. The Covenant, we don't know if they're changing the rarity of it, but yeah, that could end up being expensive as well, as it is insanely strong now. So both on softcore and hardcore, I think that'll be used a lot. Darkness Enthroned, the other unique, very, very cheap, no matter what. Aminanu's Gaze. This is quite rare, so could end up being very expensive as well. And this is part of why we have the Summon Rating Spirits as what you're doing early on, because that requires pretty much nothing and you can farm up the currency to go animate later. The drawbacks for this build is that it's quite like, it's a very intense build. Like you have to click a lot. There's a lot of keys to do, but you do get so much damage and it's so fun running over something, convocating, and it just vaporizes. Socket pressure is pretty tight on the build. Worst case scenario, you can run unset rings to make sure you have room for everything, but everything should fit exactly. I hope you guys enjoyed this build guide. Hopefully I get to play it this league. I wasn't able to last league and I really wanted to, and it's stronger this league. So thanks for watching, good luck, and let me know if you're starting this build. Sub if you liked the video, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.